Hi all, this is Dana here. In this video, I'm actually going to be talking about a topic that's kind of controversial amongst cross-stitchers, and I know I'm sure some of you are thinking, like, what could be possibly controversial about cross-stitch? But one topic is that a lot of people kind of struggle with and aren't sure what's true and what's not true, is what the back of your piece looks like. I mean, this is actually like such a divisive issue amongst cross-stitchers that in many cross-stitch like Facebook groups and things like that, the admins actually won't allow these kind of topics to come up. Like if people start showing the photos of the back of their piece, the admins will actually delete it because people get really on one side of the fence or other of this and they start sort of attacking each other, which is crazy. I mean, it's cross-stitch and the whole point is to relax. So what I thought I'd do is I'd have a little discussion with you about what the issues actually are, and when you should worry about what the back of your piece looks like, and when you shouldn't worry about what the back of your piece looks like. Alright, so what I'm going to be doing is actually I'm going to be showing you the back of some of my pieces. These are from the vintage Sass collection that I just released, and I'll be using these as demonstrations. I actually put some of them into, put a picture of this one in particular, the back of it, onto Instagram just to show people, like, it's okay what the back looks like, it's okay, don't panic. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you the reasons why you do want to worry about the back, what the back looks like, and then explaining why most of the time you don't actually really need to worry about it. So the first one is if you're entering your cross-stitch piece into like a competition or a fair, like a county fair or something like that, where it's going to be judged, definitely you're going to be wanting to make sure the back of your piece looks nice, because that will be judged and you will lose points. I'm not sure how the judging scale works. You will lose points if the back of your piece isn't really, really neat. So if you're a competition stitcher or you really enjoy making pieces for competitions, then yes, you are going to have to worry about what the back of your piece looks like. I know a lot of stitchers, their grandmothers always told them that, you know, the back has to look as nice as the front. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why, is if you're going to put your piece in to be judged, then yes, the back will be judged. And another reason is, and I'll show you this with this piece that I'm working on here slowly. This is Blaine Billman's Spirit of the Sockeye. So it's a beautiful piece. It's actually doing it on 28 count. Black cashel linen, and as you can see how translucent it is. It's really, really fine, delicate fabric. So this piece actually has a salmon jumping out of the water, so like there's going to be like water splashes in white all across this area, and it's going to be something that, like, there's going to be like a little splash here, a little splash here, a little splash here, that type of thing. So it's not going to be connected to the main part of the salmon itself. So what I'm going to have to do with this one is I'm going to have to use a lot of pin stitches, and I'll put a couple of links in the video description about what a pin stitch is and how to do it, and not carry my floss across the back, because otherwise it's going to be seen, because it's such sheer fabric and it's going to be white floss. You'd be able to see it clear as day, like there would be no hiding it whatsoever. So I'm going to have to be very careful about what the back looks like, just because you will be able to see it from the front. So that's the second reason you're going to want to be careful, is if you're using a really sheer fabric or something that's really delicate like this linen, you are going to have some issues with if you're carrying your threads across the back, as opposed to something like this fiddler's cloth here that I'm using for these pieces. This is a lot denser, this is basically an oatmeal Aida fabric, so it's a lot denser, so even if you do drag your floss across the back, you're not necessarily going to see it. Like you can see here on the back, I've dragged it across, but from the front, you don't really see it. So, you know, unless you're holding it up to the light, but I mean, who's going to frame their piece like that? So that's the second reason you're going to want to be careful, is if your fabric is really translucent or sheer. The third reason you're going to want to be careful about what the back looks like is when you're framing it, you don't want any big giant lumps or knots or anything like that, just because if you get big lumps and whatnot, when you're framing it, what's going to happen is when you're framing it, and like I've got videos too about how to do framing and stretching and things like that. I can put those in the description as well, those links. But if you're framing it and there's big lumps and knots and stuff in the back, and I use very small knots sometimes depending on how I'm stitching, But if you're using like really big lumpy knots, or if you've got like huge big tangles of floss at the back that are sort of in one area or whatever, what happens when you're framing it and stretching it to frame it, it's going to create a lump from the front. So it's going to be visible. So that's another reason you want to sort of be careful about, what your back looks like as far as making sure there's no big lumps and tangles of floss and things like that. And as well, if you're constantly, tangling your floss up, maybe your needle's not very good quality and it's actually kind of starting to shred the floss, which makes it tangle more easily. And you're actually wasting a lot of floss doing that as well if you have huge big tangles of floss at the back. So that's your third reason. You don't want big lumps from the front. And your fourth reason is if you're traveling a lot between different colors, like you can see here in this one. I'm traveling between this color to this, from here to here. So obviously there wasn't too many stitches of this particular color. In this case it was black. So there's a few stitches here and then a few stitches here. So I didn't really want to end the thread here and then carry on here. I know some stitchers will only sort of carry their thread across the back no more than 2 or 3 stitches. I don't really have any specific rules like that for myself, just whatever works for me at the time. But if you are going to be dragging your thread across the back like this, you are using up a little bit more floss than if you ended your thread and then carried on out the other side. It's not a big deal. I mean, most patterns do take into account the fact that, people are going to be doing this, and they do estimate sort of on the positive side. They're going to tell you to get a little bit more floss than you might need just in case, or in case you get a big tangle and have to lose some of your thread that way. But the only reason you want to be careful about dragging your floss too far is, number one, if you're dragging it really far, you could get caught when you're stitching and things like that. And sometimes if you're dragging your floss across the back and then you stitch again into a different color, for example, you might accidentally drag a bit of that color up through the front, so you have to kind of poke it back down. But if you're using kits very often don't tell you the floss color or the floss name, and they only give you a certain amount of floss. So if you're using kits and you're dragging your floss across a lot, you may actually run out of floss, and then you're going to be kind of having to contact the company, if you can contact them, if it wasn't like an old kit or something like that, and get more floss, which is problematic because, that delays you from finishing your piece, and you have to get more floss and whatnot. You might have to pay extra for that. So that's one of the reasons why, it is important to sort of be mindful about how much you're carrying your floss across the back. Some stitchers really, really enjoy getting the back of their pieces looking super, super neat, and they take a lot of pleasure out of it. Like, other than the 4 main reasons I've kind of outlined, if you don't care, it's fine. It's your stitching. I mean, the whole point of cross stitch is so that you can enjoy your piece, enjoy your stitching. It's supposed to be relaxing. It can be really meditative when you start getting into it, the simple motion of your hand going over and over and over. It's really, really calming. So if you've been told by somebody, oh, your back has to look perfect, it has to look as neat as the front, and to be quite honest, like, that's pretty near impossible to do, to get your back to look exactly the same as the front or as neat as the front. It's just, especially if you've got a lot of different colors going on, it's pretty difficult to do that. I don't want people to stress about this. I've heard about some stitchers who actually stopped stitching because somebody looked at the back and then criticized them, which I think is so rude anyway, unless they were being judged in a fair, like I said, and then they stopped stitching because they were so concerned about what the back looks like that they actually stopped stitching, which I think is such a shame. I mean, like, this is another piece from the new collection here, and, like, I love the back. I think it looks really cool. It almost looks felted. Like, I think it's got its own little personality. So I'm just going to try and zoom this in here so you can see it a bit. Nope, not zooming. Yeah, like, I love the back of this one. I think it's really, really cool. It's got its own little personality. And actually there's a really, really neat embroidery artist. I'm sure I'm going to butcher her name. Her name is Cayce Zavaglia. And she does amazing pieces. I'm going to show a few pictures of her work from her website here. And what she discovered is her pieces are big, like really, really big. And what she discovered was that when she flipped over the back of one once, and she realized it had its own personality, like, it was almost like people talking about the reverse of their personality, or like their public persona versus their private persona, and she had this sort of epiphany that this was really representative of her work as an artist to actually show the reverse. So she actually started exhibiting the reverse of her pieces and then doing paintings and such based on the reverse, or she calls the verso, of her pieces, which I think is amazing. So she was sort of opening up this whole conversation about the divergence between your presented and your private selves, which I think is really, really amazing. But, you know, I think the back of the pieces have their own little personality, like even this one. Like, you know, to some people this might look super messy. And to me, it's just like, well, that was like the diary of how I stitched. Like, you know, the colors on the top were the last ones that I stitched, and so you can kind of see it's almost like a little diary of me completing this piece. So to me, it doesn't bother me at all. I know some people looking at this are probably freaking right out, going, oh my god, it's terrible. But, you know, there's no big knots, there's no lumps, it's not going to be seen from the front. And to be honest, unless you're showing these in a fair or something like that, nobody's going to see the back, so I wouldn't even really worry about it. And if it's something like a bookmark, you can line it so that you can't see the back and to help protect the back too. If you're at all worried and concerned about what your back looks like, if you've got people telling you that, oh, the back has to look as neat as the front, that's what my grandmother told me, and all this kind of stuff, don't worry about it. Just do it. It makes sense for you, even the way you stitch. That's the amazing thing about cross-stitching, is you can choose how you do this. There is no right and wrong way to do anything. Like, I even know, like, some artists, when they're stitching, like, traditionally you get your top stitch all going the same direction so the light reflects evenly and the colors look even. But I know lots of people, they actually mix that up just to create more texture on their piece. So there really is no right and wrong way to do it, especially nowadays. I mean, like, there's so many, like, the subversive cross-stitch patterns, like these kind of, like, little funny ones and whatnot, you know, or the more traditional, like, big pieces, or, you know, samplers, whatever you're into. There's sort of no real right and wrong way to do it, so it's just a matter of figuring out what you're happy with and not letting what other people think deter you from stitching. If you're happy with making the back look perfect, go for it. That's amazing, and I applaud you. Like, I just don't have the patience for that. But if people are, you know, criticizing the back of your piece and you're considering stopping stitching because of it, please don't. Yeah, there's no real reason to worry about it, and I really, really hope you've gotten something out of this video. And if you'd like some more details and a summary of this video, I'm going to be putting a link to the blog post in the video description. And you can also see a link to the collection here that I've shown you a few of the samples of. These are my most recent ones, so that's why I'm showing them to you. On the website, if you go to the link of each pattern, I'll put the link in the video description as well, you can actually see some sort of in-progress photos of me working on these pieces. And if you would like to comment, if you have any feedback for me, if you disagree with me, that's totally okay. I'm happy to hear your feedback. If you have any suggestions about other videos you'd like to see, that would be fantastic, because I love helping people learn things that are useful to them. And I also have some free patterns on my website, so if you'd like to access those, you can click the button up on the top right of the screen, and you can sign up to the Peacock Lounge, and so you'll get all the free patterns plus a 20% discount code. And if you're on a mobile device and you can't see that little button that pops up, it's the first link in the video description. And as always, if you subscribe to this channel, then you will get notified of when the next video comes up, and you won't miss out on any good tips and tricks. And please share this video if you enjoyed it. I'd love to help people learn that it's okay to just stitch however they like. And that's it for now. I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.